In front of the mirror, I meticulously adorned myself, preparing to meet my fiancé whom I had never met before. I felt a deep sense of helplessness. Once I step into this world, there's no turning back. When it's the end of the world. Aziel, what are you doing? My oh-so charming mother shrieked in my face, resembling a banshee. I'm going out, I replied, nonchalantly, keeping my expression neutral. I knew that was bound to piss her off. Out of all my siblings, I was the only one who managed to send her off the edge. Maybe it was because I was her only daughter and I was supposed to act gentle, delicate, and sweet. She huffed, preparing herself for another argument with me. All we ever seemed to do these days was have a screaming match. No, you're not. You know what today is, she retorted, firmly. Her jade green eyes, the ones I had inherited, showed fierce determination. I would not be able to get out of this, no matter how hard I tried. This was the one thing she wouldn't let go of. My shoulders slumped in defeat and I suppressed and I roll with great difficulty. Come on, Libby. We need to get that awful face paint off your face. Referring to the make-up I had bought on Earth a few years ago. She hated the stuff, much like how she hated Earth. It was the one realm she refused to visit. Reluctantly, I followed after her. Her long, white gown railed after her. She looked so regal, elegant. That was what she got from centuries of training. Even though my oldest brother was now the king, my mother still participated in her high queen duties until he found his mate. She didn't mind though. I knew she loved being queen. We ended up in my large, exquisite room. I had always been very fond of my room. It was the best out of all my siblings' rooms. My father favored me more than them. It was a fact well known in our castle. I sat down at my dressing table and stared at myself in the mirror whilst she called my maids. My albino hair was plaited to perfection and trailed down my back. Flowers had been stuck at the top, forming a crown. Most Phi beings have similar features. We were extremely pale. So pale, humans would think we were sick. Our hair was either blonde or white. It was rare to come across a Phi who had brown hair. Nearly all of us had some form of green eyes. Mine were distinct because I was a royal. Most had forest green eyes, but not us. We all had jade green. They were bright and seemed to glow under certain lights. I want my daughter to look stunning for her fiancé, my mother ordered, receiving a wince from me at the fiancé part. I hated it. The maids nodded their heads in unison and quickly got to work. They vigorously wiped the make-up off my face and then began using natural ointments made by our own gardener. When it came to my hair, they loosened the braid and pinned my hair into a traditional Phi hairstyle. They let my long, thin hair loose so that it curled down my back and left the flowers pinned in my hair. My dress was extravagant. It was a white one with gold and jewels embedded in it at the bottom. It hugged my body tightly, accentuating my curves. I looked like a goddess, just as mother wanted. She had to make sure my fiancé, Prince Aziel, would fall in love the second he saw me. Even though we had been betrothed at birth, we had never met in person. I only knew him from the stories I had heard from his kingdom. He was the prince, soon to be king, of the Dark Realm. His father was good friends with my own father. That was how our marriage was created. They were celebrating my birth and his father mentioned how he was worried if his son would find a good queen one day. One thing led to another and the next thing we knew, I was tied to Aziel. Today was our first meeting. My family along with his own would attend the meeting. Mother wanted me to make an impression. I twirled around in the mirror, taking myself in. You look gorgeous, my mother complimented from her spot. Tears pooled in the corners of her eyes. She made no move to remove them though. Despite her demanding and rude nature, I loved my mother to bits. My bedroom door knocked in without waiting for an answer. Two of my older brothers walked in. The twins, Atlas and Kale, and both wore wicked expressions on their faces. They were known for being the most mischievous out of all the king's children. I came in as a close third. You look like a snowflake. Atlas snorted at the sight of me, flicking my nose. I swatted his hand away, scrunching my nose up. They knew I hated getting dressed up like this. Piss off, I muttered and earned a scolding from my mom. She loathed swearing. It was not the correct language for royalty. Language, she yelled, frowning at me in disappointment. You better not speak like that in front of Aziel. My brothers mock saluted, trying not to chuckle. I pinched my lips together firmly and bobbed my head up and down, showing her I understood. We should go. They will arrive any minute, she muttered, checking her expensive watch. She led us down the many corridors I used to play in when I was a child. Thousands of pictures of our ancestors and antiques were scattered around. The grand doors were swung open by two familiar employees. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My other 3 brothers were standing, talking to my father. At the sight of me, silence ensued. You could hear a pin drop if you listened close enough. Libby, my father practically cooed, embracing me tightly. Greedily, I inhaled his comforting scent, finding peace. When I pulled away, he examined my appearance from head to toe. Fatherly love glowed in his green orbs. You look beautiful. Genuinely, it was no secret in my family that I favored my father over my mother. Don't get me wrong, I did love my mother a lot. She did give birth to me and nurtured me. She wasn't evil or cruel, but we didn't connect as well. I had a special relationship with my father that I wouldn't trade for anything. Thanks, Dad, I chirped. Gratefully, I could practically feel my brothers rolling their eyes at me. They would never admit it, but they were jealous of my relationship with him. Especially Morpheus, the current king. Dad wrapped a reassuring arm around my shoulder and pulled me in for a side hug. He knew I needed it. Desperately. My favorite brother, Jacob, sent me a secret wink, reassuring me. He was always there for me when I needed him. He was a good brother. They'll be here in a few minutes. Libby, my dad informed me, dampening my mood instantly. Stay strong. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Everything will be fine. I wanted to believe him so badly. My dad was always there for me, he was always right. Yet, I couldn't believe him this time. Impatiently, we all waited for their arrival. It was torturous, standing there, twiddling my fingers, and waiting. I'd rather be doing something mischievous, or as my parents say, stupid. You see, most Fi is known for being quite naughty. My parents were once before they came into power. It was like they lost their charm after that. Now they are serious constantly. My brothers are like me as well, except Morpheus. Understandably, he was playful once and relished in the freedom we were given as young adult. Now he always had a permanent scowl plastered on his face. 1 minute passed and nothing happened. Then another minute. And another. It soon rolled over to 10 minutes and nothing happened. My nervousness transformed into anger and annoyance. If they weren't going to arrive, I had better things to do. Where are they? I whined, slouching. Morpheus rolled his eyes at my attitude, even though he was feeling the exact same way. I'm sure they'll be here in a minute. Libby, my mum reassured me, hiding her nervousness well. Patience is a virtue after all. The twins snorted at that. They probably found this whole ordeal hilarious. They didn't have to worry about being married off to some prince. They could choose who they were going to marry. They could marry there if they wanted to. I couldn't. I was destined to Prince fucking Aziel. Huffing, I turned to my father and silently pleaded with him to let me go. I hated standing around, doing nothing. It was so unfair. Why did I have to be subjected to this torture? Please, I begged him, bringing out the big guns, I mean my puppy dog eyes. He stared down at me, pinching his lips together firmly. No, Liberty. We have to wait until they arrive. And what if they don't turn up? I retorted. He didn't reply. Another 5 minutes passed and they still hadn't arrived. My brothers began conversing with each other, no doubt comparing their boredom with each other. This is getting ridiculous. My mother whispered to my father, loud enough for me to hear. She hated tardiness. My love, they'll be here soon. I'm positive, he replied, confidently. Trusting my father, she accepted his word without a second thought. They trusted each other completely. Their bond was so strong that even the thought of lying was inconceivable. Not even a second later, the doors barged open and the head guard of our palace waltzed in. Your Majesty, may I present King Waldorf, Queen Serena, Prince Aziel, and Princess Anna. They stalked in with their heads held high. The current king and Queen Prince Aziel's parents were in front. They both had dark green eyes which were the color of avocados and blonde hair. Tall and regal were what I instantly thought. A snotty expression was plastered on their faces. It made my distaste for them grow. Prince Aziel was next to capture my attention. The picture I had been sent of him did him no justice. He had inherited his parents' features: platinum blonde hair, green eyes, sharp, cunning features, and a tall frame. He also had a large build. It must have been from working out. He was extremely handsome, yet it was all ruined by the air of arrogance around him. If there was one thing I hated in a man, it was titled arrogance. Just because he was royalty, it didn't mean he had to be cocky. God, I hoped it was just a front. I drifted my gaze to the young female. She was like a carbon copy of her brother. But as a woman, she was pretty and lean. She must be some sort of warrior. She looked around 16 years old, but the way we aged was different. She could be around 30 years old, give or take a few years. This woman had to be his sister Anna. I straightened my posture at the sight of all of them. The current king and queen approached my parents and my oldest brother. They both greeted each other in our customary fashion, a slight tilt to the neck. This was how royals greeted each other in my world. Everybody else would have to bow or curtsy. Next, it was Prince Aziel's turn. He bowed slightly at them and greeted them politely. Princess Anna curtsied afterward. Her expression was stoic. High King Orion and High Queen Diana. It's been a long time. King Waldorf greeted smoothly. He had a rough edge to his voice that was uncommon in our kingdom. Everyone was soft, spoken, and gentle. My father's lips stretched into an accommodating smile. Roughly 70 years, if I'm correct. Yes, around about that. He mused. Prince Aziel cleared his throat, capturing all of our attention. A confident smirk was planted on his pink lips. He immediately set his eyes on me, directing all of his attention to me. Princess Liberty. His voice smoother than his father's. I found it very annoying, though. You are even more beautiful in person. Did he think complimenting me would get him in my good books? Thank you, I replied through gritted teeth. A plastic smile was fixed on my face. I could feel my eyes twitching. I wouldn't be able to keep the facade up forever. Then, without asking me, he had the audacity to grab my hand and plant a wet kiss on it. I recoiled quickly, wanting to wipe his saliva away. He didn't seem to notice. Unfortunately, he must have been so absorbed with himself to notice. My father then introduced my brothers to the visiting family. They were all polite and engaged in small talk with them. The twins seemed interested in Anna, making her blush, acting innocent. I rolled my eyes at their antics. They flirted with anybody that had legs. Would you like to see your quarters? My father asked them, standing beside my mother. He had an arm wrapped around her waist. They accepted and followed my parents through the castle. I followed closely behind them, keeping my eyes on their backs. My father had ordered the staff to cut off the west wing of the castle, dedicating it to them and their staff. It was usually used for guests. As we entered the first bedroom, I saw Queen Serena lean into her husband and whisper something in her ear. With my good hearing, I easily heard what they said. It looked so plain. She mumbled, distaste clear in her tone. My fingers curled together in anger. Prince Aziel must have inherited his snobby attitude from his mother. My parents pretended they didn't hear anything, refusing to create drama. They wanted this alliance with them to work. After telling them their runes, we left them alone. Tonight, we would have a ball in their honor. That was when the public would be made aware of our engagement. I followed my family to the drawing room and collapsed on the exquisite-looking couch. A long breath passed through my lips. Do I really have to do this? I asked my parents, flickering my eyes up to my parents. You do, Connie, my father murmured, sympathetically. I groaned and squeezed my eyes shut. The twins fell onto the couch, one either side of me. Atlas placed his heavy arm around my shoulders, cutting me towards him. I grunted but didn't fight him. I needed some sort of contact right now. Sister, am I allowed to voice my opinion of your fiancé? Kaylee asked me, watching my reaction closely. You're going to anyway, I muttered. He never listened to what I said. His lips twitched. I could tell he was itching to smile. I think your fiancé is an asshole, I gasped, feigning shock. Wow, really? What made you guess that? He pinched my arm, evoking a yelp from my lips. I glared at him and lightly punched him back. When we were younger, we would constantly be fighting physically. We were nightmare. Don't be an ass, do. I don't think I can deal with two of you, he retorted, shuddering at the thought. My glare turned frosty. Don't insinuate I'm the same as that man. I am most certainly not. God, how am I going to survive with that pompous idiot? With lots of alcohol. Atlas piped up, teasingly. Don't even go there. I deadpanned. Our great-grandmother turned to alcohol after the death of her. It destroyed her so much. The only way she could cope was with alcohol. She would drink herself senseless. It hurt my father a lot to see her like that. In the end, she killed herself because she couldn't bear living in a world without him anymore. I was only joking. Baby, Atlas murmured in a defensive voice. I know you were. It's still too raw, I replied, sighing tiredly. She passed away 10 years ago, which wasn't a lot of time in my realm. So, are you excited for the ball? Jacob, my favorite brother, queried from his seat opposite us. He was by far the nicest brother and the kindest. He spent most of his time bouncing between realms, helping people. Everyone adored him because of his generosity. God, no. I am dreading it so much. Jacob stared at me sympathetically. It'll be okay. We'll be with you the entire time. I was grateful he would be there. It made things bearable. What if he talks to me, though? Will I have to keep up a conversation with him? I groaned, resting my hands on my cheeks. Do you really think I'll be able to keep up the happy couple image? Jacob pressed his lips together, pondering what to say. Just be yourself. Libby, Declan, the second youngest sibling, said to me. Declan was a very quiet person. He kept to himself most of the time. We got along though. He was also very wise and always had the best advice for me. And if he doesn't like who you are, then he doesn't deserve you. I thanked him, taking in his wisdom. I would be myself because he'd eventually find out who I really was. It might not even be that bad. Who knows? Maybe I'd enjoy it tonight. If only I knew I'd swallow my own words. To run. Baby, run. My mother stayed with me whilst my maids fixed me up. She refused to let me be seen in the same outfit as earlier. She also insisted I had to be the talk of the kingdom, so I had to look like an utter goddess. I always knew I had been blessed with beautiful features, but I wouldn't say I was a goddess. That title was reserved for my mother and her alone. She was the most beautiful person I had ever seen. A true masterpiece. They poked, prodded, and peeled at my face and hair like I was a Barbie doll. She kept blabbering on about how I had to look perfect. Her watchful eyes never left my form. I spent 3 hours getting ready. I was so close to ripping my own hair out and plucking my eyelashes. How I managed to stay strong for so long is still unknown to me. Oh my gosh. Prince Aziel, my mother whispered. Breathless, she dabbed the corners of her eyes carefully, gobsmacked by my appearance. Since I was her only daughter, she wanted me to love fashion like her. She adored dressing up for people and wished I was the same. It was moments like this her dream came true. What? Do I look terrible? I joked, more for myself than anybody else. You look so beautiful, she gushed, her voice filled with awe. She looked so proud of me at this moment. She had never looked at me like that before. Despite hating my predicament and my mature age, I still wanted her love and affection. Whatever she offered to give it to me, I took it greedily. I hugged her tightly, relishing in this contact. "Thanks, Amand," I whispered into her ear. She pulled away first and fixed her light blonde hair. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." She guided me out of my room and to the main hall where everybody would be. I would meet my father at the doors to the entrance and they would both walk me down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs would be Prince Aziel, who would then dance with me in front of our kingdom. Guards were stationed at their posts. A few of the younger ones couldn't help but gawk at me. One of them boldly winked at me when my mother wasn't looking. I smirked at him. "Remember to keep your head up and your eyes on him," Mom reminded me for the millionth time. "Yes, Mother," I muttered. She pinched her lips together and carried on leading me to my father. He was wearing his typical royal outfit. His features brightened at the sight of us approaching him. He couldn't stray his eyes from my gorgeous mother. They had been together for nearly 500 years and they still stared at each other as if it was the first day they had met. "My two girls look stunning," he complimented us, stroking my mother's cheek affectionately. She closed her eyes in bliss, enjoying the moment. "Thanks. Honey, are you ready then?" "Libby," my father asked me, looping his arm through mine. I inhaled sharply and nodded my head. I wasn't ready. Not really, but I had no choice in the matter. "Okay, here we go." One of the royal guards announced us individually. Dramatically, the two doors were swung open, revealing an onlooker of guests. Gasps erupted loudly. People couldn't keep their eyes off of me. I felt like a queen. Elegantly, we sauntered down the marble steps, heading towards Prince Aziel. He too couldn't seem to move his eyes from my body. Lust was evident in his eyes. I felt disgusted by the look in his eyes. My body wasn't his. It never would be. I hid my repulsion. Problems would be created. I couldn't do anything to affect this union. So instead, I plastered a sweet smile on my face and pretended I was thrilled by his lust. Prince Aziel held a hand out for me and smirked at me like he was some godin. I was some immortal who should be glad we were being forced together. I wanted to wipe that smirk off of his face so badly. He whirled me onto the dance floor immediately. Guests formed a circle around the floor, giving us plenty of room to dance. It was the waltz, a dance I had been trained in from a young age. Remember to stare into his eyes. I recalled my mother's firm words. I swung my gaze to his. His green eyes were cold and horrid. There wasn't a flicker of warmth in them, just an endless dark abyss. It was like staring into a black hole. I absolutely loathed how close we were. His touch was scorching my skin, and not in a good, pleasant way. It made me wither in repulsion. "You could at least pretend to look happy," he stated in an icy voice, seeing right through me. It wasn't like I was trying very hard to hide my true feelings. My skin pricked at his voice and my brain was yelling at me to get away from this man. I hissed in a quiet voice. We couldn't have any guests thinking I wasn't happy with this. What was it that Penguin said in that one children's movie? "Smile and wave. Just smile and wave." He arched an eyebrow. "Cook-I-L-Y. Sure, doesn't seem like it. You know, loads of girls would be grateful for this position. You're going to be queen, not just a princess. You should be thanking me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I should be punching you in the face. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Right. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Thank you so much for letting me marry you. I am so grateful for this opportunity. I have always wanted to be married to some arrogant prince I have never met. I just can't wait until I'm queen. I snapped, sarcastically. He didn't appreciate my tone or words, but he couldn't exactly do a lot in public. We had to look like some loving couple. We were getting towards the end of the song. The next move was a dip. Without warning, he dipped me down to the ground and then abruptly pulled me up, flinging me around like a rag doll. I flashed a glare at him, showing my annoyance. When we finished, the crowd applauded us loudly. I slipped an award, winning smile on my face, and let him press himself to my side. I was screaming. This man was even worse than I expected. I hated him with every fiber in my body. He didn't give a damn about me, and he never would. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. An empty aura surrounded him. I got a nasty feeling about him. Nothing about him felt right. I couldn't back out of this now, though. If I upstaged my parents, a war could happen. We wanted to unite our kingdoms, not divide them. We faced the crowd, holding hands. A few familiar faces caught my eye. They were all beaming at me, happily. Their applause bounced off the walls, circling around the supposed happy couple. When the noise stopped, my father addressed our guests in his usual formal, business tone. Welcome. Today we are here to celebrate a union between my beautiful daughter and Prince Aziel. Cheers erupted once again, and my family appeared to be beaming at us. My cheeks began hurting from the smile on my face. As if he could sense how I was struggling to keep the act up, Prince Aziel tight and his hold on my hand, squeezing it. It wasn't reassuring in the slightest. It was a warning. Let go of me, you dumbass. Tonight, two kingdoms join together and form an unbreakable bond. My father continued, standing beside my regal mother. My father looked like a god. In my eyes, he practically was one. They will make a beautiful and fair couple. I am so proud of them. Once again, everyone cheered. It was painful to see all of this. They had no idea what was behind our masks. I won't keep you any longer, my father added, coming to an end. You are all free to party now. They all dispersed onto the dance floor and to the corners of the room to talk. I attempted to move away from Prince Pompous douche but was stopped by his tight grip on my forearm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I tried to pull myself out of his tight hold, but to no avail. He was annoyingly strong. So, instead, I shot him another frosty look. Can you let go of me? I asked through gritted teeth. His strong jaw ticked and his eyes glowered right back at me. He did not like what I was doing. This man was somebody who hated the very idea of a woman fighting back. He had probably loved the 1950s. Stop being a bitch, he whispered into my ear, harshly. The tone of his voice was lethal, deadly enough to cut through a fairy's invincible wings. I scowled at him. I hate to break it to you, but you don't control me. Your Highness, if we weren't in a packed room, he would have lost his shit. He did something totally unexpected. A wide smile spread on his face, but it wasn't one of kindness. It was sinister and evil. Listen here, princess, he said through a slippery smile. As soon as we are married, I am going to show you who is really in control. You will be nothing but my pet, a breeding machine. In the eyes of my people, you will be my pretty queen, but behind closed doors, you will be the dirt I walk on. I had no words. I couldn't believe what he said. I had never felt so degraded in my life. He obliterated me into, well, dirt. Normally, when someone insulted me, I would make a feisty comeback. Yet, nothing flashed in my mind. All I felt was dread. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. When we were married, I would have no way out. No escape. He would control my future. Divorce wasn't allowed here. Once you were married, it was for life. He had found a way past my walls and had shot me straight in the heart. A bullseye. This man was truly vile. He had managed to plaster a princely exterior, fooling everyone. A flash of his wolfish smile was enough to have people fall to their knees in awe. Prince Aziel was the devilry incarnated. Nothing to say. No sassy comeback. He mocked me. I thought you had a bit more strength than that. It seems I was wrong. You are just like every other woman. Weak. Pathetic. The blood in my body practically sang with anger. But I couldn't do anything. I was trapped with him. Prince Aziel steered me away from prying eyes into a secluded area, where nobody could hear us. Now, if you be a good wife for me, I will grant you some freedom. If you don't, then I will make you wish you were never born. Am I making myself clear? All I could do was nod my head numbly. Compliant, I won't have to be like this. I can show you what a devoted husband is like, he continued, enjoying this too much. This was one sick bastard. There was a reason we stayed away from the dark fire. He was the reason we did so. They were cruel and monstrous. My father, who could only see the good in people, truly believed these people had something light in them. The words were clogged in my throat. Every fiber of me refused to utter any form of agreement. What he stood for was against my values. But I had no way out of this. If I didn't lose my attitude and wild streak, he would make my life hell. He knew he could. Once we were married, he had complete control of my life. I was at his disposal. Darkfire had the ability to see your deepest fears and use them against you. That was exactly what he was doing right now. He could see what I feared the most and exploited it. His hand came up to my face and involuntarily, I flinched. Slowly, his fingers caressed my skin. Terror crawled down my spine and glittered in my eyes. He saw this and chuckled, finding my fear amusing. For the first time, his dead green eyes sparkled. I realized with disgust that he enjoyed seeing me like this. This is how he wanted me, docile. I want you to use your words. Baby, he murmured, huskily. Any other woman would have thought his voice sounded incredibly sexy. I didn't. I could now see who he really was, and the facade he had up would never hide his true nature ever again. When I still didn't respond, his fingers trailed down to my jaw and cupped it aggressively. The breath in my throat hitched. Are you already disobeying me? I shook my head. And satisfaction crossed his features. Good. Now tell me you will be a good wife. I will. It took everything in me to say that. Right now, I wanted to escape his hold and cry alone. I wanted to run away into the dark and never look back. I wanted to be so far away from him so that his prickly cold hands could never touch me. In the space of an hour, he had reduced me to this. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Feeble girl. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm, and power were enough to frighten a princess. I felt so belittled. What on earth would a lifetime with him do to me? Good. That's what I want to hear. Princess. He cooed, his mood shifting instantly. Now off you pop. I must go and talk to my father. And like that, he was gone and I was finally alone. Slumping against the wall, I avoided eye contact with everybody. Tears threatened to fall from my eyes. Where had my headstrong personality gone? Where was my determination to be free gone? Fresh air. I desperately need fresh air. The music, the laughter, and the joyous atmosphere were all too much. I couldn't watch my brothers and parents laugh along with everyone else, oblivious to what just conspired between Prince Aziel and myself. With agility and grace, I snuck out of the large ballroom and into my favorite garden. Peace circled around my body, soothing my shaky limbs. I always found peace here. It was the first place I would go to when I had an argument with my mother or brothers. My feet trailed through the garden whilst my hands brushed against the various flowers. Tranquility. That was what I named it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It was a very fitting name. At the back of the garden was a bench dedicated to my grandmother, who passed away 30 years ago. This was our memorial to her. Our subjects had a statue in the center of town. Most people didn't know my grandmother was a tough woman. If she found out how I reacted to Prince Aziel, she would have a fit. My grandmother was a strong and resilient queen. She had to put up with my determined and stubborn grandfather. Collapsing onto the chair in sheer exhaustion, I fluttered my eyes closed and tilted my head back. Memories of that deranged asshole floated in my head. The way he spoke, the presence he brought with him, it was all too much. A twig snapping broke my train of thought. My ears perked up at the sound of a quiet noise not too far away. Jolting in my seat, I whipped my head around and examined the castle's garden suspiciously. There was a bitter taste in the air. I rose to my feet, cautiously, and examined the area in a scrutinizing manner. The feeling of being watched surfaced in the pit of my stomach. "Hello," I called out into the night, naively, as if I would get a reply. No response. Treading carefully, I exited the garden and tiptoed into the forest. An uncomfortable feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. The path I walked along led me to a small lake. The glowing moon was reflected on it. I darted my eyes around the area. Alarmed, when I saw no signs of life, I drifted my gaze back to the lake. Oddly, I felt a hypnotizing pull to it. In a trance, I lowered myself to my knees and reached forwards. As soon as my fingers touched the water, I was sucked in. I didn't even have time to scream. Then everything went black. Where the hell am I? It felt as if I was flying. My hair was shed everywhere violently. I could see a beautiful blue sky that was familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. Gravity was pushing my body down to the ground harshly. I knew that landing would be extremely painful. Yet, in this short moment, I let myself feel nothing else but pure bliss. I had never felt so free and alive before. In my kingdom, I was always confined by some law unknown. However, falling from the sky, there was not a single person around. It was just me. And I. The impact was bone-crushing. Literally, an agonizing scream passed through my lips along with the most painful feeling in my entire body. It was otherworldly. I knew my healing abilities would come into effect any moment now, but whilst I waited, I couldn't think of anything but the collision. How far had I fallen? And why was I falling in the first place? The last thing I could remember was the lake. I had been bewitched by something. There was no other explanation for it. My mind wasn't in control of my body. Something else was. The lake called to me so softly. It was like a sweet and tender lullaby. It was enriching and so enchanting. I couldn't stop myself, I let it control me. And then, just as I touched the water, the spell was broken. By then, though, it was too late. It already had me in its clutches. It whisked me away and made mine black out. 15 minutes. That was how long it took for my body to heal and recover. Whilst it healed, I had plenty of time to ponder over many theories. Did the twins plant some sort of trick? I wouldn't put it past them, but this felt different, stronger, more elusive. The magic wasn't tainted by my brother's mischievous magic. It had another agenda. Fully healed, I sat up slowly and surveyed my surroundings. I had landed in a clearing. Trees surrounded me, indicating that I was in a forest. The whole area, including the air, was unfamiliar. Getting to my feet, I blew out a long breath. I had to work out a plan. I could either wander around and find out where I was, or I could wait here until somebody came. The latter option could take a while. I was already itching to discover where I was. Thus, I decided to walk into the strange woods. My feet crunched against the crusty leaves. A canopy of leaves prevented the burning sun from shining. I was surrounded by darkness. Oddly, I didn't feel any fear. I felt strength from it. The dark woods didn't feel like my enemy. It was welcoming, calling to me like the lake did. 30 minutes after walking, I heard something. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Stiffening, I mentally debated what to do. Should I approach them and ask them for help? But what if they were hostile people? What if they tried to kill me? I could hide and wait for them to leave. That would be the safer option. I didn't get time to decide what I would do. I was too busy thinking that I failed to notice a presence had come up behind me. Strong hands wrapped around my middle and hoisted me up into the air. A terrified shriek escaped my lips as I struggled in their hold. "I've caught her." The person holding me, a man with a thick accent, yelled to his friends. They all rushed over to me quickly and eyed me cautiously. There were 5 of them in total, including the burly man holding me. "Let go of me." To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. "Sorry, but I can't do that." To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. "You are trespassing," he said to me, without any sympathy. "Well, shit. Trespassing," I echoed, stopping my movements. "What do you mean? Where the hell am I?" "You are in no position to demand answers." "Girl," a man in front of me, with deadly eyes and a powerful aura, uttered coldly. "You seem to be the ringleader of this merry band." "Oh, Ray, what makes you think I answer your questions?" I countered. "S not till Y." I knew I was asking for trouble. Sometimes, I just couldn't help myself. I had to open my big mouth and piss people off. I didn't know who these people were, but I knew they were dangerous and strong. They could actually kill me. The leader narrowed his eyes at me threateningly. "I would watch your mouth, girl, before I shut it for you." Surprisingly, I took his advice. I needed to stop talking. "And to answer your question, you are in Red Knight Pack," he revealed, smirking devilishly. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The name meant nothing to me. I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion, and then it hit me. He said pack. Pack could only mean one thing. These people were werewolves. I was not in my realm anymore. I had to be in the human realm. It's the only place werewolves live. Like vampires and humans. They did not know of our existence. We are just a myth to them. That explained a lot. They were powerful because they had super strength and speed. Their noses could smell a distinct smell miles away. These men had to be guards. And the sandy blonde haired man I was talking to had to be a ranking wolf. Either a gamma or beta. I was going to hazard a guess and say he was a beta. A beta was second in command, but not by birth. They were chosen. He or she assisted the alpha with the pack work. They often took over the alpha's role when he was away. Wolves respected their alpha and beta greatly. The alpha was the leader of the pack. Usually, the title passed from generation to generation since they had a strong and pure bloodline. Generally, most alphas were commanding and vicious. They had to be. When they found their Luna mate, they tended to ease up a little. I had only met a few alphas on my travel. Other than Andrew, there was a kind man named Chris. He was the alpha of a friendly Asian pack. We met when I was traveling the human realm decades ago. He had not found his Luna and was boarding out of control. I offered a compromise. He could use me as a form of release if I could learn his pack's ways. He reluctantly agreed. I stayed there for 6 months until he found his Luna. During my time there, I learned a great deal about werewolves. Specifically, their mate bond. It was quite similar to the bond we have. The only significant difference was that we couldn't identify our mates by their smell. We had to get to know them first and kiss them. My parents told me that they thought they were potential mates because they felt at ease around each other. That was one of the few indications that they could be your. Whilst I was thinking about werewolves, I had failed to realize I was moving. The man holding me was now dragging me through the woods to an unknown place. "Hey, where are you taking me?" I questioned, fighting his tight grip. If I weren't as strong as wolves, our only defense was magic. I didn't want to expose myself, though. Werewolves didn't know about my kind and my kingdom wanted to keep it that way. Somehow, I would have to find a way out of this pack using my magic. God, my parents must be fuming by now. I had vanished at my own engagement party, leaving them looking like fools. Admittedly, I didn't feel that guilty about leaving. I had temporarily escaped my cold fianc. Staying on Earth didn't seem like the worst idea. It'd mean I didn't have to see him again. To the packed dungeons so that the Alpha can interrogate you. The ranked wolf replied, monstrously. Why, I didn't mean to come here. I honestly didn't know this was a pack's territory. I blurted out, losing my tough exterior. It was nice to see that I hadn't completely lost my fiery side. Causing me and the man dragging me to come to a halt too. The ranked wolf whirled around to face me with a curious expression. It was the first soft emotion I had seen on his face. It made him appear handsome and friendlier. What are you? You don't smell like a werewolf or a vampire. And how do you know about our existence? He fired questions at me. I pressed my lips together firmly, refusing to answer his question. I would never give up my species. Fine, he huffed. Don't answer me. I'm sure my alpha will be able to get an answer out of you. I rolled my eyes and winced when the man started pulling me along again. We reached the dungeons 10 minutes later. It was not at all what I expected it to be. The facility was a 3-story, high-tech building. The windows were small and had bars on them. Guards were posted outside. As we approached them, they eyed me with interest. They took me inside the building that smelt of disinfectant and up a flight of stairs. We passed for cells, all holding angry-looking men. At the sight of me, still wearing my borgan, their eyes darkened with lust. I shivered in disgust and forced myself to turn away from their revolting gaze. The head wolf in this group led us to the end of the corridor and punched in a code into a keypad. The cell opened, revealing the basic square room. There was a small bed located to the right, and to the left there was a toilet and sink. The man dragging me shoved me into the room. Harshly, I scowled at him and crossed my arms over my chest. So, you're just going to leave me here until the Alpha comes? The man in charge nodded his head. Casually. Precisely. Signed. I watched them slam the cell door shut, locking me in this werewolf prison. I forced my feet over to the metal bed and rested my back against the wall. As much as I didn't want to go back home, at least I wasn't a literal prisoner there. Prince Aziel wouldn't be able to lock me up without raising suspicions. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing Kishut's enthusiasm. I'd rather be here than anywhere near him. I'd rather be in these cells than in the same room as him. Perhaps this is some sort of blessing in disguise. Maybe I was brought here for a reason. Maybe, just maybe, fate didn't want me with Prince Aziel, so it brought me to the one place he would hate going. The human realm. Instead of seeing this as something negative, I could see this as a sign that I wasn't meant to marry Aziel. I had always been fascinated by this world and what it had to offer. Living here wouldn't be hell. I could be happy, as long as I get out of here alive. That is. Time passed strangely. There wasn't a clock in my cell, so I had no idea how long I spent staring at the opposite wall. Engravings had been carved into the wall. Most of them said, "Help. This prison must be filled to the brim with rogues." Rogues were pack, less wolves. Most wolves believed they were rabid and feral, so they steered clear of them. I had actually met a rogue when I was last here. He was not what I expected. He told me his mate had died and he didn't want to live in their house anymore, surrounded by their memories, so he left his pack. He wasn't crazy, just sad. Some rogues were bad. Typically, they were kicked out of their packs for being cruel, and that made them take revenge on other packs. Half the time, being kicked out of their packs drove them to be so cruel. Bolgin girl, a new rough voice called, breaking my reverie. I flickered my gaze up to the new man. Compared to the other guards, I got a glimpse that this man was small. That didn't mean he wasn't strong, though. It was evident he worked out. Sliding off the bed, I stalked over to the door where the food hole was and took the tray of food. My upper lip curled upwards at the sight of the revolting food they gave me. "This is food?" I questioned, sounding pretentious and whiny. The guard growled at me in warning. "Shut up, princess." I stilled at the pet name. I knew he didn't know who I was, but it still sent a jolt of fear through me. Shutting my mouth, I walked back to my bed and picked at the yucky food they gave me. The only edible item was an apple. I bit into and imagined I was eating one of the delicious meals I had at home. Even the water tasted awful. Not good enough for you. A slow voice muttered from the other side of my cell. It was the ringleader. He was stood with his arms crossed over his chest, causing his biceps to bulge. Now that I wasn't being thrown around like a ragdoll, I had an opportunity to examine him. He was roughly 6 foot and was built like a body ballad. Every single part of his body was defined. His eyes were hazel color, and his features were sharp. His sandy blonde hair had been tossed back, probably by his hand. He was handsome, but then again, all werewolves were. Unlike us, they were all tanned and coated with muscle. Fire appeared as gentle creatures. I already told the guard I didn't like it. I explained, leaning the back of my head against the wall. I could feel the man's eyes roaming my body. What is your name? I thought your alpha was going to be questioning me. I countered, slipping a lazy smile onto my lips. His face remained neutral. He's running a bit late. He'll be here in a minute. Why don't you tell me your name first? To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Changing the subject. Beta Blade. So, I was right. He was the beta. I'm Liberty, I introduced in a light tone. He grunted and stared into my eyes in an loving way. He came across as somebody who could read you without having to talk to you. Heavy footsteps interrupted the silence between us. The atmosphere became eerie. There wasn't a single sound in the place. My heart was hammering in my chest nervously. There could only be one reason this was happening. The alpha had arrived. Sucking in a breath, I willed my heart to stop beating so quickly. Werewolves had super hearing. They'd be able to hear my erratic heart from a mile away. I wanted to come across as somebody strong and confident. When he came into sight, I swear my heart skipped a beat. He looked absolutely terrifying. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This is the trespass, Blade murmured to his alpha, lowering his gaze respectfully. When his eyes settled on me, I felt the blood drain from my face. His eyes took in my gown passively and wandered up to my face. When his eyes rested on my eyes, they flashed brighter. He furrowed his eyebrows and took a step back in shock and anger. To my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Blade asked, his voice bordering worry. Bring her to my office. I will question her there. He ordered his beta, refusing to look at my form. His velvety voice was rough yet bitterly sweet. It sent delightful shivers down my spine. He spared me one last look and then stomped off, leaving me and the beta thoroughly confused. The quid pro quo, hurry up. Beta Blade grunted at me, yanking me. I rolled my eyes. We were back to this again. Do none of these people value common decency? Do they do this to every single person they meet? I'm not some dog. I have legs, I can walk like a normal person. I muttered, nearly tripping over my own feet again. We had made it to the pack house. This was where most of the pack wolves stayed. The only people who didn't were werewolves who had found their mates and wanted to start a family somewhere quiet. It was a gigantic house that could easily be mistaken as a hotel to any mortals. People were littered around the grounds. The kids were playing in the large park they had whilst moms were sitting on picnic blankets, enjoying a cold drink. A few people, in a formal uniform, were gardening. The whole area seemed so serene and happy. That all changed when they caught a whiff of my scent. The women tensed and fixed a hostile expression on their faces. A few even growled at me. Warriors who were patrolling the grounds stared at me with a mixture of lust and anger. I knew I still looked like I had been run over by a dumpster truck. Blade pulled me inside, away from their prying eyes and along the long and windy corridor. Everything about the house screamed aristocratic. Extensive antiques were dotted everywhere, whilst numerous paintings hung on the walls. We came to an abrupt stop at the end of the corridor. Blade tapped on the wooden door and waited for the person on the other side to let him in. the husky voice that could only belong to the Alpha ordered us inside. He was sat on the other side of his desk, seeming more at ease now. I now had time to drink him in. He was gorgeous. Too gorgeous. He sat up straight in his leather chair. Both of his thick arms rested on the large desk in front of him. His attire was business-like yet still casual. His body was built to perfection. There was no doubt in my mind that he was strong. His t-shirt was extremely tight against his body. My eyes shifted to his face. His olive skin wasn't completely smooth. A few scars marred his forehead and face. His nose was also crooked, indicating that somebody had broken it once. His brown hair was messy and unpicked. I suspected he often dragged his rough hands through his locks whenever he was stressed. And finally, his hypnotic eyes. They sucked me into them, trapping me. My whole body ignited when they landed on my form. An earthly fire spread between my legs. "Take a seat," he instructed, gesturing to the uncomfortable, looking chair opposite him. Hesitantly, I lowered myself into it whilst Blade stood guard by the door. Both of their penetrating eyes were on me. "So, Blade says your name is Liberty," the Alpha said, his face remaining cool and collected. However, a storm was brewing in his grey eyes. Something about him made my heart race. I didn't know the guy and he appeared as somebody cold and unforgiving, yet I didn't care. I felt a connection to him. Why was I thinking like this? This guy was probably going to kill me. Yes, fiddling with my fingers. "Why are you here?" He got straight to the point. I don't know. I stammered, feeling dizzy under his gaze. He made my body feel tingly. He exhaled loudly and narrowed his eyes at me. "What do you mean, you don't know?" I circled my finger around the ring my mom gave me and stared at it with interest. "Well, I was at a party and I needed some air, so I went outside and somehow found myself in your territory. Someone once told me that the best way to lie was by adding some truth. I told the truth but just left out a few details. You're telling me you disappeared," he concluded, suspiciously. I nodded my head, sticking to my story. Pretty much. He knew there was more to my story, but for some reason, he didn't press me. He continued to interrogate me. "What?" I could sense they were both curious to know my answer. I had to come up with a believable answer quickly. They wouldn't believe I was a human. I didn't smell like one, and humans didn't know about the supernatural world. I also didn't want to tell them who I really was. If I broke the law, I'd never have the option to go home. Lie, I had to lie. I'm half witch. I lied, forcing my voice to not waver. My mom was a witch who fell in love with a human. They had me and told me about this world. The Alpha stared directly into my eyes and assessed them. He was clearly searching for deceit. I kept them focused on him and made it appear as if I had nothing to hide. Even my heart had stopped beating frantically. He leaned back in his chair and continued to keep his eyes on me. "A half a witch," he mused. "How interesting." "How so?" "We haven't met many witches before, but the ones we have met, they are nothing like you." Casually, "Oh," I said, dumbly. "Well, I grew up in the human world. I don't have much magic." God, I was digging myself into a deeper hole. If he could sense the lie in my voice, he didn't say anything. He didn't even react. The expression on his face remained neutral. No matter what I said or did, there never seemed to be a flicker of emotion on him. It was like he was a robot. Was all he said. "What are you going to do to me?" I asked him, anxiously. "Are you going to kill me?" He pinched his lips together. "That all depends on you." "Me?" I echoed, pointing at myself. "Tell me, have you ever heard of the term quid pro quo?" I knitted my blonde eyebrows together and cocked my head to the side. "Yes. It's a Latin phrase that means something for something." He seemed marginally impressed that I knew the phrase. Little did he know that I could fluently speak 6 languages, including Latin. "Yes. Well, I believe it describes the situation we are currently in." Locking eyes with me again. A dark look flashed in his eyes, but it was so quick, I had no time to decipher what it meant. My mouth fell open. What can you possibly need from me? I stuttered, bouncing my eyes between him and his beta. Surprisingly, Blade looked equally puzzled. For some reason, the Alpha had a plan for me that he didn't let anyone else know about. If you are a half-witch, then you should be able to read this ancient book we have. It's supposed to tell us more about our pack's origin, he explained, picking up a worn-out book on his desk. I eyed it curiously and saw it had a symbol on it. Witches are the only people who can read this. I had heard of a book of wolves before. It held many secrets about their origin and heritage. It was written in an ancient language, Greek, which just so happened to be a language I knew well. What's in it that's so important? I'm not sure. That's why I need you. And what do I get in return? Arching an eyebrow. This all seems so unbelievable. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Obviously, he piped up, revealing it to me as if it was the most obvious answer in the world. I didn't like that he knew I needed that. How do you know that I need protection? It's not till why. Why else would you be hearing that? Embarrassed, I closed my mouth and slumped my shoulders. As much as I hated to admit it, I did need somewhere to hide. A werewolf pack was the perfect place. This Alpha was intelligent. Very intelligent. He knew more than I let on. I would have to make sure I didn't underestimate him. So, let me get this straight. You want me to stay here so that I can translate some book for you, and in return, you give me a place to live along with protection. I summarized, making my summary as clear as day. That's correct. This sounded too good to be true. There had to be more to it. He was holding some information back too. I'm sorry, actually. I'm not really, but I am finding it very hard to believe that you would offer this to somebody you have never met before. I could be an axe-wielding maniac for all you know. I voiced my doubts, rising to my feet. None of them found my statement amusing. Tough crowd. I guess you'll just have to trust me, he declared. I loosened a breath. Staying with him wouldn't be so bad. I could prolong the amount of time it took me to translate the book until I decided what to do. I was putting a lot of faith in this Alpha. I was assuming he wasn't going to try and kill me. Funnily, when I glanced back up at the Alpha, I felt as if he would never hurt me. It felt like it was impossible for him to do that. He was everything I imagined as safe. Okay. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Quid pro quo. I accepted, taking a chance. The Alpha showed no emotion at my answer. I had to assume he was pleased. Alpha the Beta finally intervened, making his opinion known. He stepped closer to the table and placed his hands on it. You can't seriously let this stranger stay here with us. The Alpha looked bored by his antics. Blade, it is my choice. Beta Blade looked at him in disbelief and bewilderment. But Gabriel, she could be a danger. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Using the Alpha's name instead of title. Incredibly disrespectful. Alpha Gabriel. It had a nice ring to it. I'm really not. Blade looked over his shoulder and scowled at me. You don't get a say in this. I sat back in defeat and rolled my eyes at him. Somebody must have woken up on the wrong side of the bed. Gabriel. He lowered his voice, sending him a knowing look. Why are you letting her stay? You've never done this for anyone else before. Alpha Gabriel picked up the book and practically waved it in Blade's face. I need this translated. Blade. Now stop questioning me. I know what I'm doing. I want you to take Liberty to room 326 and offer her some clothes. Blade clenched his jaw but didn't argue. He must have figured it wouldn't go anywhere. Follow me. Blade snapped, marching towards the door. His untrustworthy eyes didn't leave my body. I felt Alpha Gabriel's eyes on me as I walked away. It made my body alight once again. When I left his office, all of those feelings vanished. Being away from him didn't sit right in me. My heart was hollow and empty. Snap out of it. Libby, you just got yourself out of one mess. Don't try and get yourself into another. I inwardly scolded myself. Sometimes I wondered if I was asking for heartache. Blade led me to the entrance of the house, and then up a flight of stairs. Instead of stopping on the first floor, we continued upwards. It turned out there were 8 floors and over 350 rooms. I couldn't help but gawk when Blade reluctantly told me this. I shouldn't have been surprised though. Most packs had well over 500 members. My eyebrows shot up when we got to the top floor. Usually, only the highest-ranking wolves stayed here. I was going to be sleeping on the same floor as the Alpha and Luna. Are you sure this is my floor? I made my hesitation known. Surely there had been some type of mistake. Blade ignored me. He opened a big door. Sign 326. Cautiously, I stepped past Blade and into the room. It was extremely luxurious, not what I expected at all. There was a queen-sized bed to my left, next to a door leading to a closet. To my right, there was a leather couch and television, plus a large desk. Another door was situated next to a bookcase, possibly leading to an en-suite. I couldn't believe they were giving me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A room like this. They had opened up their house to me and were allowing me to wander around freely. Why was the Alpha being so generous? Are you sure I didn't get to finish my question because Blade had already slammed my door shut? Great. Now what was I supposed to do? Thankfully, I didn't have to ponder on this for long. Not even 2 minutes later, a gentle knock sounded on my door. Biting my lip, I approached the door and swung it open. A young girl with shoulder-length raven, colored hair and large onyx eyes stood awkwardly, holding a pile of clothes. She was wearing a basic outfit and was a lot smaller than me. I have some clothes for you, she announced. Gesturing to them, I gently took them and thanked her. The corners of her lips quirked upwards. You're welcome. She loitered outside of the door for a few moments as if she was questioning whether she should stay or not. In the end, she left. I shut the door and eyed the pile of clothes she gave me. There were quite a few t-shirts and jeans. She also gave me lots of underwear. I stared at the fabric inside. I don't think I'd ever worn such normal clothes before. Slipping out of my dress was difficult. When I first caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror, I gasped. My beautiful dress was torn everywhere and was covered in dirt. If my mother saw it, she would probably go grey. The gown pulled around my feet. I quickly put the new clothes on and picked up my dress. This dress was a reminder of last night with Prince Aziel. As beautiful as it was, I never wanted to see it again. I chucked it in the empty wardrobe and then tackled my hair. It was a disaster. It took me 20 minutes to get all of the knots out. The poor hairdresser had so many of my hairs tangled in it. Now that I had sorted myself out, I had nothing else to do. To pass the time, I put away the extra clothes I had and tidied the already tidy room. As I did this, I hummed a tune my mother used to sing to me. Happy memories flooded through my mind. Images of my mother tucking me into bed when I was a little girl came to mind. A lone tear trailed down my pale face, but I made no move to wipe it away. I missed them terribly. They had no idea where I was. They must be so worried about me. If I told them where I was, they would immediately notify Prince Aziel and his family. The wedding would go on as planned. I would be stuck with him, so I couldn't contact them. Not now, at least. Perhaps sometime in the future, when the drama had died down. My body collapsed on the bed from sheer exhaustion. I was mentally and physically tired from the events of the past few hours. My eyelids began to droop and I welcomed the darkness that accompanied it. Sleeping for a few hours would do no harm.